So welcome everyone. We're so glad you're here with us today. We're going to talk about getting started on sub-regional plans. So I'm seeing people from local governments, consulting firms, all over the Bay here. So please just keep putting your names and introducing yourself in the chat so that we know who is here. So my name is Dana Breckwald. I'm the Assistant Planning Director for Climate Adaptation. This is the fourth in a series of webinars. We have been leading on the Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan, and this is really a part of BCDC's effort to help communities feel supported from start to finish as we work together to develop sub-regional adaptation plans. So this webinar, we will work through how to get started on creating a sub-regional plan that is compliant with our Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan. So if you did not make it to the first three webinars, no problem. Everything you need to know to follow along today will be covered in this webinar. But if you do want to catch up, the recordings from the previous webinars are all posted on our website and our YouTube. So before we dive in, let's just make a couple of notes about how the webinar will run today. We'd love for you to use the chat to share your thoughts and respond to the interactive questions we'll be asking. And if you have a question for presenters, please drop that in the official Q&A box so that we don't miss it. We'll have a Q&A session after we present our slides. Your Q&A button is at the bottom of your screen. Looks like a little speech bubble with a question mark. And feel free to submit your questions at any time during the presentation, and then we'll get to them later during the Q&A. And if we are unable to answer all of your questions live, we will include the answer in our written Q&A document that you'll find on our website after the webinar. So I want to quickly just introduce some of my team members joining me today. They will say hi throughout the presentation as well. I'm joined by Jackie Perrin-Martinez and Danielle Flanagan. We are all part of the Planning Division at the San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Commission, or BCDC. And if you are not familiar with BCDC, we are the state agency with planning and regulatory authority over the San Francisco Bay and its shoreline. And we're also joined today by Megan Williams. She is the Coastal Resilience Program Manager at the Ocean Protection Council. Megan is our guest speaker today, and she'll be sharing updates on funding opportunities and how they can support local planning efforts. So this is what we will be covering today. We'll start by sharing our goals for this session and give a quick recap of the webinar series so far. In part one, we'll talk about how BCDC can support you before you even kick off your sub-regional plan. Part two, Megan Williams will share about the SB1 funding opportunities, which can help get your plans funded. And then in part three, we'll walk through the key steps in the formal plan initiation process and submission process so you can see the full picture and know how to initiate your plan with BCDC. And then, as I said, we'll close with a few takeaways and then open up for a question and answer session. So our goals for today are to really make sure you walk away with three key things. First, you'll know how and why to connect with BCDC early on. Second, you'll be aware of funding opportunities available to help you get started. And third, you'll understand the key steps in plan submission, approval, and update process so it feels clear and manageable for you. So now that we've talked through our goals, let's take a quick step back and give a quick recap on what we've covered so far in the first three webinars. So next few slides will highlight our key points so you have the background as we move forward together. In the first webinar, we introduced the Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan, or RSAP, which is the regional framework for addressing sea level rise across the Bay. The RSAP includes guidelines for sub-regional plans, that's what you'll be doing, and is designed to help communities work together, support equity, and protect our Bay's ecosystems. Building on webinar one, webinar two focused on creating sub-regional plans. These plans can involve just one jurisdiction or several working together and need to follow the RSAP guidelines and meet the minimum standards. Each plan should map the four main flood hazards under 4 sea level rise scenarios, identify critical assets, consider equity, and outline well-informed adaptation strategies. And then in webinar 3, we introduced the RSAP Atlas. This is a data and mapping tool to help develop your sub-regional plans. The Atlas provides about 65% of the data you'll need to do your plans, including sea level rise scenarios, flood hazards, and information about shoreline assets. It's designed to help support your work and help to make informed decisions. It's just a tool. It doesn't actually choose strategies for you and doesn't replace local planning, but it can help guide your decisions. So now that I've recapped the first 3 webinars, I'm going to hand it over to Danielle to walk you through the support the BCDC offers.
Thanks, Dana. Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Flanagan, a climate adaptation planning specialist at BCDC. I'm excited to tell you about how BCDC can support you and why connecting with us early in your planning process can make things easier and more effective for your community. But first, you might be wondering, why start now if the deadline isn't until 2034? There's a few important reasons. Starting early gives you the chance to build partnerships and line up the right collaborators. It also means your community can see protections for hazards sooner. Additionally, sub-regional plans approved by BCDC are eligible for priority funding for adaptation. So the sooner your plan is approved, the sooner you can access those resources. And those funds won't last forever. And finally, beginning now lets you take full advantage of specialized support from BCDC throughout the process. So now that you're convinced it's worth starting your plan early, we want to encourage you to connect with BCDC even before the formal process begins. We can help you plan with confidence and make the process smoother from the start by examining scopes of work or making sure expectations are aligned. We can help you utilize and build on existing work by reviewing plans and data to make sure they meet the requirements. We can help clarify the RSAP requirements and guide you through the planning process. Ultimately, the main point is that throughout the process, BCDC is here to work with you as a technical and thought partner, not just as a regulator. Now that you know why connecting with BCDC early can help, let's talk about how to actually get started. There are 3 key ways we recommend to begin. 1 is visiting our website to orient yourself to the process. 2 is exploring our planning resources to dive deeper into the planning process. And then 3 is connecting with your sub-regional liaison to begin building a relationship with your go-to person at BCDC or to answer any questions you have on the process. We'll dive into each of these so you know exactly where to go and who to reach out to. The BCDC website is your central hub for everything you need to get started with subregional planning. You can find background information about the RSAP and subregional plans, guidance on how to begin your plan, and the current status of plans in your jurisdiction. The site also includes a plan resources page, which we'll dive into the next slide. And you'll also find information and a direct link to the RSAP Atlas, which provides about 65% of the data you need for planning. And finally, you'll see contact information for your subregional liaison, and it's listed by county, so you can reach out anytime for personalized support. On the plan resources page, you'll find everything organized into 4 main areas to help you at every stage of your plan. First, there's the RSAP 101, which helps you understand the RSAP and how to use the guidelines to create your plan. It includes overview materials and our introduction level webinars. Next is the adaptation planning resources, which go beyond the basic requirements, offering strategies, best practices, tools to really strengthen your plan and better prepare your community. The funding section gives information on the cost of creating a plan and information on securing funding for both planning and implementation projects. And finally, the resource library organizes past webinars, trainings, reports, case studies all in one place, making it easy to find and use the material most relevant to you. This page is always evolving. We're continuing to add new resources to support you, so it's really worth checking back regularly for the latest tools and guidance. On the subregional liaisons page, you'll see each city and county is supported by a dedicated staff member. This is your go-to contact at BCDC. Your liaison can connect you to the right resources, introduce you to the right people, can help guide you through the planning process. To find out who your liaison is, you simply just need to check the page and you'll see them listed by county. You can email them directly or set up a quick appointment through the online scheduler to get personalized support whenever you need it. Additionally, our team is growing by 3 in the next few months, so we will have even more capacity to be your partner in the planning process. All right, let's do a quick check-in. Which BCDC resource do you think you'll use first? The website, the planning resources page, or your subregional liaison? Go ahead and drop that in the chat, and we'll pause for a moment. Awesome. Seeing a lot of website, a lot of resources page, some saying they're already using it. Keep them coming. Awesome. Some sub-regional liaisons. Great. Thanks for sharing. Feel free to keep submitting if you haven't decided yet what you're going to start with. But this is super helpful to see what people are most likely starting with and helps us gauge where support's needed. So up to this point, we focused on how to get started and the support available from BCDC. But one question we hear a lot and haven't addressed yet is how do jurisdictions fund their planning? We know that planning can be expensive and resources are limited, so it's important to highlight the funding options and the support available to make this process more manageable. There is a wide range of opportunities out there, especially for project funding. I want to flag that the State Coastal Conservancy put together a really helpful webinar that goes through the landscape of state and federal funding programs. Also, Coastal Quest, in partnership with the San Francisco Bay joint venture, put together the Coastal Funding Database that offers a wide range of public and private funding to support coastal resilience programs and projects. That webinar and the database are linked on our plan resources page if you want to dig a little bit deeper. For now, I'm going to hand it over to Megan, who's going to dive deeper into the SB1 grant program. This program is particularly important because it's already supporting quite a few of the sub-regional plan efforts happening across the Bay.
Thanks, Danielle. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me at this fourth and final RSAP webinar. My name is Megan Williams. I'm the Coastal Resilience Program Manager with the California Ocean Protection Council. And yes, here today to share how you can access funding for development of your subregional shoreline plans through OPC's Senate Bill 1 grant program. Next slide, please. So just to set the scene and provide a bit of background on the program itself, the SB1 grant program is intended to implement Senate Bill 1, which directs the state to provide funding to local and regional governments to develop sea level rise adaptation plans and implementation projects, and also supports local governments in meeting the requirements of Senate Bill 272, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with, but requires all coastal local governments to adopt sea level rise plans by 2034 and integrate those into either a local coastal program for the outer coast or the San Francisco Bay subregional shoreline adaptation plans. Overall, the goal of the SB1 grant program is to provide funding for coastal communities to develop consistent sea level rise adaptation plans and projects, building resilience along the California coast and San Francisco Bay. Next slide. So the SB1 grant program is set up to have two main tracks for funding. Track 1 funds sea level rise adaptation planning. So this track is currently open. It's accepting proposals on a rolling quarterly basis. And these Track 1 proposals are reviewed via a non-competitive process, which means the proposals are not ranked against one another, but they're instead compared individually against a standard set of evaluation criteria. We also have our Track 2, which is for sea level rise implementation projects. This is not yet open, but we do anticipate bringing this Track 2 solicitation to our September 30th council meeting for approval, with an anticipated opening of Track 2 this fall. Further details will be released at that time, but we do anticipate that there will be a pre-proposal or a letter of intent phase, followed by select applicants invited to submit a full proposal. And unlike Track 1, the Track 2 process will be competitive. For today's purposes, I'm really going to be focusing on Track 1, since those are the planning grants that are now open, and that's the main track for funding for subregional shoreline plans. Next slide. So here's an overview of our Track 1 funding. We anticipate having between $20 and $30 million available. That number is pending two things. First, consideration of approval and award of our current round of projects at our September 30th council meeting. And second is Senate Bill 105, the Budget Junior Bill, which is pending the governor's approval, but includes $20 million in Prop 4 funds for the SB1 grant program. Track 1 awards typically range from $200,000 to $1.5 million, but higher amounts may be considered with strong justification, such as a multi-jurisdictional plan involving several cities or several partners. The project timeline is typically 2 years, though again, extensions may be considered depending on scope and complexity, again, for like a multi-jurisdictional plan. And then proposals are due on a rolling basis and they are reviewed quarterly. So the next deadline that we have coming up is December 19th. And that would be for projects that would then be considered for funding approval and award at our March 2026 council meeting. Next slide. Applicants that are eligible for this track 1 of the SB1 grant program is local governments, regional governments, and federally recognized tribal governments. Organizations or consultants who apply on a government's behalf may be considered, but we do need to see explicit support and collaboration between the organization and the government, and that would be provided within the application via a letter of commitment from the government. Next slide. Okay, so here's what the process really looks like from start to finish, starting from application all the way through to project implementation. So first, you start with submitting an application. Again, for track 1 proposals, I'll say this on repeat, they are accepted on a rolling quarterly basis. Once they're submitted, the proposals undergo review and evaluation. So they undergo both an administrative and a technical review. The administrative review is essentially just a check to make sure the application is complete and meets the basic eligibility requirements. And if it passes, it'll move to technical review. During technical review, OPC staff review the proposal to determine how well it meets the program goals, aligns with the solicitation, and the evaluation criteria. For these Bay Area projects, we do coordinate very closely with the BCDC staff who review the proposals for alignment with the Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan guidelines, as well as other statutory requirements. And during this step, OPC staff may also reach out to applicants with follow-up questions, requests for clarifications, or small revisions to strengthen the proposal. And this really just allows us to make sure that we are fully understanding the proposal and that projects are really set up for success before moving forward to council approval. From there, we move to the award stage. So OPC staff will prepare recommendations based on these evaluations, and these projects will then be brought to the Ocean Protection Council for consideration of approval and award. And again, those happen on a quarterly basis. Our upcoming one on September 30th, we'll have some track 1 projects for consideration, and in December, and so on. Once the project is approved at our council meeting, it will then move into the work plan development stage. OPC staff work directly with the grantee to co-develop a detailed work plan. And then once that work plan is approved and the grant is executed, we move into project implementation. And that's when the work can actually begin and the project can take off. Next slide. In addition to the grant program itself, OPC also offers a complimentary SB1 technical assistance program. This TA program provides support with application and project development. It offers a suite of services such as proposal planning and grant writing assistance, budget development support, stakeholder and community engagement guidance, and GIS or data support, and many, many more opportunities and options. Next slide. This is just the basics of the TA program process. It's quite simple. It starts with completing an online initiation form. This is just a short 5 to 10 minute questionnaire. It's really aimed at just gathering a bit of information about you as an applicant, your general project scope or ideas, and what TA services that you're interested in. From there, the TA team will review and reach out to conduct an intake call. And during that call, they assess your eligibility using the priority criteria that we have and assign both a TA level and a TA provider. And then finally, you move forward to actually receiving technical assistance. And that's where the TA provider works with you to help you complete and strengthen your proposal. Importantly, I will just say, if anything from this TA program slide is just, if you are unsure whether you qualify or if you still have some questions, we do encourage you to apply for TA anyway. The TA program is really designed to meet applicants where they are, answer questions that may come up during the process, and provide you guys the most up-to-date information from the OPC SB1 team, and really just help you throughout this entire process. Next slide. Okay, that is it from me, except to say that we do encourage you to reach out if you're interested in applying or if you have any questions. The QR code that you see on this slide will take you directly to our SB1 webpage, which really contains everything. That has our solicitation, the rolling deadlines, the application template, more information about the TA program, and a link to that TA initiation form, and a lot more. And then this email that's on the screen is the best way to get in contact with the OPC SB1 team if you do have any additional questions, but I will also be here during the Q&A, and I'm happy to answer questions there. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it back to the BCDC team.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan. So thanks for walking us through the funding options available through Senate Bill 1. Just as a clarification, it's not required that you have to do that process. It's just a really fantastic way to get funding. There's lots of ways you can get funding, but this one has been really successful in the region. So now I'm going to turn it over and start to walk you through what BCDC's formal process looks like for going through a subregional plan with us. Before I get into those details, I want to take a quick step back and provide some clarity on our authority, as BCDC has different types of authority. Our permitting authority means that BCDC can approve or deny permits for projects that place fill, extract materials, or make substantial changes in the use of land, water, or structures within BCDC's jurisdiction. BCDC also has other regulatory authority under the Sassoon Marsh Preservation Act and the Federal Coastal Zone Management Act. On the other side, our planning authority comes from Senate Bill 272, which we've highlighted and Megan highlighted as well. This bill gives us the power to create the guidelines for planning and to review and approve subregional plans. Our commission adopted the RSAP, which contains these required guidelines for planning, back in December 2024. And this planning authority is what we're talking about in these next few slides. The key thing to remember is that the RSAP is advisory to projects. A project being in an approved subregional plan doesn't replace the need for a separate BCDC permit. So today we'll be walking you through the formal planning process for subregional plans. So we will not be covering BCDC's permitting steps and scope, but we have an amazing permitting team and lots of information on our website if you're interested in learning more about our permitting side. Okay, so let's get into it. This slide shows a graphic representation of the formal subregional plan process. This process is designed to guide jurisdictions in developing plans that align with the RSAP guidelines and meet legal standards. The goal is to provide a clear, structured path while giving jurisdictions the flexibility to plan in a way that works best for their communities. And I know there's a lot on here, but don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it. So you'll notice that the formal process requirements are heaviest at the beginning of the process and at the end. At the beginning, you'll submit your notice of intent and connect with BCDC staff to set up your plan for success. At the end, your final plan is reviewed and brought to BCDC's commission for a vote for approval to make sure it meets the RSAP guidelines and legal standards. The middle section is where the hard and important work really happens. This is the community engagement, local planning, developing your adaptation strategies. While we have a minimum of 2 required consultations with BCDC, we're here to support you throughout this entire process, and we strongly encourage that you reach out to us often. We're available for additional meetings beyond these 2 and highly encourage it. You can reach out anytime to chat with us about the guidelines, get feedback on your draft strategies, or just talk through your approach. We're here to be, as Danielle said earlier, both a technical and thought partner with you every step of the way. So that was the overview. I'm now going to take a moment to actually dive into each of the details so that you really understand the process that we've laid out. The first step in this formal process is submitting a notice of intent to initiate a plan, or NOI, as we abbreviate it. This kicks off your subregional plan with us and lets us know that your planning has started. The NOI must include several required elements, such as a project description, the lead agency and participating jurisdictions, your scope, work plan, and schedule, and a plan for CEQA or other environmental documentation, and a public engagement plan. To make things easier, BCDC provides a fillable PDF template so that you can be confident that you've included everything required. And we've linked this on our slide. It's also available on our resources page. The next step is holding the preliminary consultation. This meeting is required, but hopefully we've already connected with you before this at this point through some of that kind of pre-initiation conversations. And this meeting is an opportunity to officially meet the team and your plan leads, review your NOI together, and confirm that your jurisdiction is ready to kick off the plan. Once BCDC schedules this meeting, we'll provide you an agenda, a PowerPoint presentation, and an intake survey so that you have a better idea of what to expect at the consultation meeting and how to prepare. These materials are linked here, again, also available on our website and resources page. And so after this preliminary consultation, there are at least 2 more official consultations at points that we can identify together. That said, we hope to talk with you more and meet more often throughout the process. These are just kind of the officially required touch points. The last step of the initiation phase is the public notice to begin the process. So within 30 days of our preliminary consultation, all participating jurisdictions must post a notice letting the public know that plan preparation has begun. This step is important because it ensures transparency, keeps your community informed, and opens the door for early engagement and feedback from stakeholders right at the start of your planning process. BCDC will also post a public notice on our website and update our subregional plan tracking tool with these notices so that the region and neighboring jurisdictions know who's planning. This is when the plan is officially kind of public. There's another step in the process that's spelled out in the RSAP guidelines regarding data validation. Some jurisdictions may want to use their own local data in place of the regional data that we provide in the RSAP Atlas. If you decide to use this alternative data, we require that you submit the data and a short written description and request explaining why and how it meets the RSAP standards. BCDC staff will respond within 30 days, and we also have a process of appeal in place in the event that there's a rejection for some reason. This process ensures that your plan uses reliable data while staying aligned with the RSAP guidelines. And I want to note that you can do this at any point in the process. Ideally, if you know earlier you plan to use different data, letting us know earlier is always helpful. If you are simply supplementing data from the RSAP Atlas with your own local data, so that means data that we don't make available, you don't have to go through this step in the process. So after your preliminary consultation, as we've said, you're required to have at least 2 more consultations with BCDC during your plan development. We'll work with you to identify the best times for this to happen, and they should be included in your project work plan and your schedule in your NOI if you already have a good sense of when these should occur. Once a plan has been initiated and noticed, these 2 required consultations are the minimum number of check-ins for this big middle section of your plan, which could take several years, and it's really where this hard work happens. This is where you're planning, you're engaging your communities, you're developing strategies and solutions. That said, we'll continue to say that we encourage you to meet with us anytime you need guidance, want feedback, or want to run some ideas by us. Some points in the process, there are certain points in the process that could be really useful points to check in with us. And those are often when you're either starting or completing different phases of planning. So for example, after completing an existing conditions report or your vulnerability assessment, you can share a draft with BCDC and staff will provide comments and review. We don't provide approvals in these meetings, but we can provide guidance and support on alignment with the guidelines. Another great time to meet with us is before you start adaptation, or even while you're in the middle and evaluating strategies, so that we can discuss expectations about meeting our adaptation strategy standards and provide technical guidance and tools to help you in your decision making. So again, think of us as a partner helping you along the way and helping you kind of track what is working best for your community. Okay, so that was a lot. We still have a little bit more to go, but we wanted to take a pause and hear from you. So speaking specifically about these consultation meetings with BCDC, I'd love to get a sense of where you think you might need the most support or guidance from BCDC. So feel free to drop in the chat which areas or phases or parts of your subregional plan do you think you might need the most support with or would like support with from BCDC. This, for example, this could be assessing vulnerability, designing your adaptation strategies, conducting your stakeholder engagement or planning for it, or it could be another topic. There's kind of no wrong answers here. We're just curious to know where you think we can provide some support and where we can make sure that we're able to give that to you. So I will pause for a moment and let folks put in some responses. Seeing some support on adaptation strategies, which makes a lot of sense. Definitely the purpose of the whole planning effort. So that's great to hear. Engaging tribal governments, absolutely. Plan approval, stakeholder engagement. Just give everybody 30 more seconds or so. All right, well, this is great. This really helps us to get a sense of, where you might come to us and how we can be best prepared to support you. So as we continue, feel free to keep putting these ideas in the chat. And any specific questions for us, make sure to put those in that Q&A, as Danielle mentioned earlier. So whether you need support in one area or several, the important thing is that you feel supported throughout the planning process. So we're excited to work with you going forward and learn how we can provide that support. Okay, so we've now been through the beginning. We've talked about consultations in the middle, and now we're going to talk about the final phase of the process. So this is the other point where the formal requirements are fully concentrated. Before you can submit your subregional plan to BCDC, it must first be formally adopted by your local jurisdictions. This means making sure the community has a real opportunity to weigh in. You'll need to follow your jurisdiction's standard public noticing procedures and hold at least one public meeting announced at least 30 days in advance. All of those notices, meetings, and comments need to be documented and included with your final submittal to BCDC. So because your plan must be locally adopted first, at this stage, you should have met with BCDC the amount necessary to ensure that your plan is aligned with the RSAP guidelines prior to local adoption. We can review your draft plan and provide staff comments prior to this phase that you go through. And this is why we encourage you to meet with us so often, to ensure that you feel ready by the time you bring this to local adoption, because this is required before you bring it to BCDC for the formal adoption or formal review. Local adoption means a formal action by your city council, board of supervisors, or other governing body. If your plan involves multiple jurisdictions, each one will need to adopt it locally separately. Your jurisdiction is also responsible for making sure any CEQA requirements are met. Once adopted, that marks the completion of the local process and allows you to officially move forward with the BCDC review. So once a plan has been locally adopted, it's ready to be submitted to BCDC. We will first review for completeness, then undertake our official staff review for alignment with the RSAP guidelines. Staff will draft a staff report and recommendation, which will be brought to BCDC's commission for a vote. Your submission should include the full subregional plan, along with all required checklists and data. You'll also need to include the local government resolution adopting the plan, any necessary environmental documentation, and a summary of the public process, including responses to comments received. After BCDC staff review your submission, the commission holds a public hearing within 150 days of receiving a complete submittal. At that hearing, they'll consider the staff recommendation as well as any input from the public before voting to approve the plan, approving it with modifications, or denying it. If modifications are needed, your jurisdiction can revise the plan and resubmit it. And once approved, the plan will be posted publicly on BCDC's website and shared with relevant state agencies. It's important to remember that commission approval applies to the plan itself and not to individual projects within it. Each project may still need other permits or approvals under existing laws. Okay, so that wraps up our walkthrough of the formal subregional plan process. Here's a graphic of kind of the whole overview again. This graphic shows the formal process from submitting your notice of intent all the way through commission approval. And while the official requirements are concentrated at the beginning and the end, we want you to know that we're here to support you, especially in this middle part where all of the really hard work is happening. We know this is a big undertaking. and we're here to help you and learn with you as you go. You're welcome to schedule additional consultations, ask for feedback, and get guidance from us on your plan development. Okay, so let's say you've gone through this whole process and your subregional plan is approved, for example. Congratulations, that's a huge milestone. We're excited for the first plan to get there and many more plans to follow. But as we know, adaptation is an ongoing process requiring regular updates to assess how projects are performing and how flood conditions are evolving. So we have to think about keeping those plans current. After a plan is approved, we'll ask for an interim status report, which is submitted midway between your next comprehensive update. The interim status report is a brief check-in that summarizes updated conditions, new data, and progress on implementation. You can send it to BCDC staff, and there's no commission approval necessary. The second step is a comprehensive plan update. This is required at least every 10 years. And this is a full update following the most current guidelines at the time, covering plan elements and going through the local adoption process again. It must also include an economic analysis of critical public infrastructure and updated implementation strategies. These updates make sure that your plan stays relevant as conditions, hazards, priorities, and values evolve. This helps your community stay prepared and resilient over time. So with that, we've covered the subregional plan process from start to finish in a lot of detail. I'll now pass it back over to Dana to cover some key takeaways from today's webinar.
Thanks, Jackie. So here's what we're hoping you're taking away from today's webinar. First, the formal subregional plan process does have legal requirements, but most of these are concentrated at the beginning and end of your planning process. Second, BCC staff are here to support you throughout the entire process. We want to see you succeed and create not only good plans, but good projects that reflect your local conditions. So feel free to reach out anytime for guidance, feedback, or just to make sure your plan that you're developing is aligning with the RSAP guidelines. Finally, there's funding available to help support your subregional plan development. So these are the things we hope you keep in mind as you start your planning work. And next slide. As a reminder, we also talked about several key resources that can support you as you move forward. Keep these in mind in your planning process and reach out if you have any questions or concerns. These slides will be posted to our plan resources page, so you can use all the clickable links in this presentation. And finally, don't forget to give us feedback on this webinar series or sign up for our newsletter to stay informed specific to the subregional plans. This is the last webinar in our summer series, but stay tuned. There will be more series coming up that will dive deeper into specific topics that we're hearing from consultations and from your feedback. We've also just launched our YouTube page, so check out our RSAP webinar series playlist to watch any of the webinars from this summer.